Hello, thank you for watching Talking with Famous People. I'm host Eric, and I'm here with an array of famous persons and assorted attendees, including my supervisor, INFP listener, Basement Overlord, Callum, Charles Barkley's French Poodle, Contract under Guadalupe Spercio, Eccentric M, JC, Gem, Just a Post Hominid, Sticks 66, and Uconda. So I would like to discuss this issue of what is an entity, and I think it's an important issue because I'm going to start with a claim that says entities can in fact be time objects, which is any sort of piece of media or book or something that expresses in some fashion, the clone of an individual's experience in one level. It could be a song, it could be a painting, it could be informative video about how to make cheese. It could be a video like this, is sort of, as was referenced briefly in the chat, solipsism run amok. It could be any number of things like that. Now, this person actually appears to have Googled it to define the word, which is such a strange thing to do. A thing with,
I do that all the time, actually.
Distinct and independent existence, which is my definition I was going to give. Synonyms: organization, institution, blah, 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 all that sort of stuff. So, right. Now, here's the tricky word, is one at the bottom says being. That's the problem most people have with the distinction I make for entities as being a thing that exists, that has distinct boundaries, and is manifestly existent. Okay? So that would make a song an entity, but specifically, I think of entities as more narrow than that description, because I don't necessarily think of space objects as entities. I think of space objects as space objects. They are things with an identity, and they are space entities in that sense, but they are not. They have no capacity for agency. That's what makes them space objects. So things that do have a capacity for agency are things like this YouTube video. If somebody initiates it, it launches a little speech at them that tries to convince them of something or inform them of something or interact with their existing psyche in some fashion or another. It's a clone of us talking about this stuff. So, as a consequence, when we're dealing with entities, in my book, the ones that are of interest and have specific force that is meaningful on human lives more than any other are going to be time objects, namely entities that have to be invoked, like a magical spell of sorts. And, of course, the difference between time objects and space objects, to recap for those who haven't heard the distinction before, is that space objects require energy to change, whereas time objects require energy to persist, or to launch, or to all those other things. So, the last thing I'll say about entities before opening it to the floor is the notion that a song is obviously a distinct entity that exists without any physical manifestation at all. You can think of the song White Christmas, for example. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. And you'll be able to sing it in your head and know the song, and we'll all have the same identity, the same entity in our respective heads, and it won't be manifest physically anywhere around us, although we know in reality it's manifest physically somewhere. We can find a YouTube video of somebody playing it, whatever. It exists as a non-definite form of its true self, which is its melody and rhythm, distinct from the voice that's singing it, or the person, or the instrument that's playing it, or whatever than that. It still has a distinct identity. Okay, so Jim asked the question, would entities exist in a universe without humans? It's a meaningless question. You can't imagine a universe without humans. That's like saying, if we could observe an unobserved universe, would some things be different? It's contradictory premises. It validates everything and makes everything unsound. I'm going to repeat that for clarification. Would entities exist in a universe without humans? Is the same thing as saying, can we observe an unobserved universe and talk about what happens in that unobserved universe? Would this happen? The answer is, it's irrelevant. It's contradictory premises. Because you have two premises that contradict each other, you can't have any kind of valid conclusion. I mean, you can have all conclusions are valid to draw from that, and none of them are sound. Okay, so chicken entities are delicious. If there were only chickens, then yes. Okay, other thoughts on this topic? Definition of a metaphysical entity. Why does it matter? Well, it relates to all these questions we talked about before. What about the transfer of consciousness from one thing to another, from one physical object, space object to another? Is it possible? Is the expression of consciousness a distinct expression of that space object? If so, why can't we turn it back on if you die or something? Is it because of cell damage? Regardless, does it matter? I think it matters because for me, I'm trying to come up with a metaphysical understanding of the universe that makes good sense. And the elements of this metaphysical construct that I use include the role of the human being an observer, making things manifest into reality. The idea being predicated on the notion that you can't have contradictory premises, so we can't imagine that which is unobserved. That it must be so that reality supervenes upon, as they say in philosophy, observation, because if it didn't, we should be able to come up with some example of something that we can name that's unobserved. But we can't name anything that's unobserved because to name it is to observe it. So, observation and reality are inextricably linked. As a consequence, it matters very much the behavior of the objects we observe into reality as we move about the universe, for whatever reason. So, it's questionable whether we're observing things into reality in a single shared space, or whether we're each rendering a reality that conforms to a single set of principles concurrently in our own on our own desktop computer, so to speak. Regardless, the point is that the entities of time behave differently than the entities of space and ought to have a different set of rules ascribed to them. So if you look at something like copyright law, for example, I think that there are very questionable logical claims to any notion of intellectual property over ideas, even though I can understand how a free market system that's fair would reward people who come up with ideas for things. So, and I also understand how I think it's important for creators to be able to control how people access their content, or else they wouldn't be able to profit off of it. So for all of those reasons, I think it's important that we distinguish between types of entities, metaphysical types of entities, space entities and time entities, and that the definition of that which is distinct and has existence is a good enough definition for it. Well, yeah, I mean, I definitely disagree with that, Jim. You're on the same page there. I don't think rights to intellectual property should exist past the creator's death. I don't think they should even be exactly protected by law so much as by platform. The YouTube platform makes it such that somebody might be able to profit off of one of my videos on some other platform, in theory, but YouTube, by being the biggest platform, kind of makes that sort of competitor irrelevant, because the nature of the thing, YouTube won't let somebody else upload one of my videos. It'll say this is a duplicate video. They'd have to change it in some way. They could try, and then I'd have to do that whole content claim thing and all that kind of stuff. But I think the point is, it's kind of the platform's responsibility to police that stuff, not the government. The intellectual property needs to be protected by affording the means of distribution powers to the content creators or the idea producers or whatever, rather than through legal mechanisms of constraint. Other thoughts on these types of objects? Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody very much for being here. Those of you who are in the room, I greatly appreciate your presence and your contributions. And for those of you at home watching, also thank you very much. And if you are curious for more media, please check out the channel page. Consider subscribing, or liking some videos would be nice too. Thanks a lot for being here and or watching. Don't forget to eat plenty of cheese.